The year is 480 BC. The largest army the ancient world has ever seen is marching toward Greece. Villages burn, cities prepare for war, and somewhere in a narrow mountain pass called Thermopylae, a small group of Greek soldiers waits for the storm to arrive. You already know what happens next. You know about King Leonidas. You know about the 300 Spartans. You know the story of warriors who fought against impossible odds. But what if I told you that the most extraordinary men at Thermopylae were not Spartans at all? Because when the battle was lost, when death became certain, when every Greek soldier was given the chance to leave, 700 men made a different choice. They stayed. Not because they were ordered to, not because they had nowhere else to go, but because they chose to die. Today, we are telling the story of the forgotten heroes of Thermopylae, the 700 Thespians, the men history left behind. To understand why their sacrifice mattered, we need to go back 10 years before the battle itself. In 490 BC, the mighty Persian Empire suffered an embarrassment that few believed possible. At the Battle of Marathon, a force of Greek soldiers defeated an invading Persian army and sent it back across the sea. For the Greeks, it was a miracle. For Persia, it was an insult. The Persian king, Darius, never forgot the humiliation. He ruled the largest empire on earth, stretching from Egypt to the borders of India. Yet a collection of small Greek city-states had defied him. Before he could launch another invasion, Darius died. The task of revenge would fall to his son, Xerxes. Unlike many rulers who inherited vast empires, Xerxes had something to prove. He wanted more than victory, he wanted revenge. He wanted the Greeks punished so completely that no one would ever dare challenge Persia again. For years, preparations were made. Food was gathered, weapons were forged, roads were improved, ships were constructed. Across the empire, men were called to war: Persians, Medes, Babylonians, Egyptians, Phoenicians. Hundreds of thousands of people would support the invasion. When the army finally began moving west, it seemed unstoppable. Ancient writers described a force so vast that rivers ran dry after the soldiers drank from them. Whether that was true or not, one thing was certain: Greece had never faced anything like it. As news of the invasion spread, fear followed. Many Greek cities considered surrender. Others openly sided with Persia. Some hoped the storm would simply pass over them. But a handful of cities chose resistance: Athens, Sparta, and among them, a much smaller city that history would almost completely forget: Thespiae. At first glance, Thespiae seemed insignificant. It lacked the military reputation of Sparta. It lacked the wealth of Athens. It was a modest city in Boeotia, surrounded by farmland and rolling hills. Its citizens were farmers, craftsmen, merchants, and laborers. They were not raised from childhood in brutal military training. They were ordinary men, and yet, before this story is over, they would make one of the most extraordinary decisions in military history. As Xerxes pushed deeper into Greece, the defenders searched desperately for a place to stop him. They found it at Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, a narrow pass squeezed between steep mountains and the sea. Here, the Persians would be unable to bring their full numbers against the Greeks. Here, a small army might hold back a giant. King Leonidas arrived with 300 Spartans. Thousands of other Greeks joined them. Among them were 700 men from Thespia. Few noticed them. Few expected anything remarkable from them. After all, history belonged to kings and legendary warriors, not ordinary citizens. Soon, the first Persian attacks began. Wave after wave crashed against the Greek line. The narrow pass worked exactly as intended. For 2 days, the Greeks held. Persian soldiers died by the thousands. Xerxes watched in disbelief. His army had conquered kingdoms, yet it could not break a single mountain pass. But then everything changed. A local man named Ephialtes revealed a hidden path through the mountains. The Persians finally had a way around the Greek defenses. The battle was lost. The trap was closing, and everyone knew it. Leonidas gathered the Greek commanders. There was no realistic hope of victory. Soon, the Persians would attack from both directions. The defenders faced a choice: stay and die, or leave and survive. Most of the Greek army was dismissed. No shame, no punishment, no accusations of cowardice. Their duty was done. They could still fight another day. the road south remained open. The men of Thespiae could have marched home. They could have returned to their families. They could have survived the war. Instead, they stayed. 700 ordinary citizens chose certain death. No oracle had demanded it. No king had ordered it. No law required it. They stayed because they believed Greece was worth dying for, and because they refused to abandon the men who had fought beside them. As dawn broke over Thermopylae on the final day, the remaining defenders prepared themselves, the Spartans, the Thespians, and a small number of others. They knew exactly what awaited them, yet none attempted to flee. When the Persians attacked, the defenders fought with a desperation that astonished even their enemies. Spears shattered, shields splintered, swords broke. Still they fought. One by one they fell. Leonidas died, the Spartans died, the Thespians died. By the end of the battle, nearly all 700 men from Thespiae had been killed. Their city would mourn fathers, sons, brothers, and husbands who never returned home. Yet their sacrifice had not been meaningless. Thermopylae bought precious time. The Greek resistance survived. Months later, the Persians would suffer devastating defeats at sea and on land. The invasion that had once seemed unstoppable would eventually collapse. And yet, as the centuries passed, something strange happened. The Spartans became legends. Leonidas became immortal. But the Thespians faded into the shadows. The men who had chosen death alongside the Spartans were remembered by few and known by even fewer. Perhaps history prefers kings. Perhaps it prefers famous names. But Thermopylae was never only the story of 300 Spartans. It was also the story of 700 ordinary men who looked at certain death and refused to run. And that is why, more than 2,500 years later, the forgotten heroes of Thermopylae still deserve to be remembered.